Thank you, Begonia. Hola, good morning. I'm so honored and excited to be here. Well, thank you for the invitation again. I have studied politicians' social media uses, and today I'm going to present some of my findings from my recent studies about two major U.S. presidential candidates' Twitter uses. I titled it "Gendered Campaign Tweets" because I examine their tweets from a gender perspective. So let me introduce the context of this study. Well, as you all know, I guess about a year ago, this happened. People said it couldn't happen, but President Donald Trump, was elected as the U.S. president. And, it was kind of surprising to many Americans and also to many people in the whole world. The whole world was responded to his victory rather enthusiastically, and they sincerely hoped the best for America. So this was kind of surprising to many people because the news coverage was not always very positive about him. He caused a lot of controversy. He caused a lot of trouble by behaving and speaking very inappropriately. And he attacked a lot of people in a very uncivil way. And the news coverage was pretty critical about his behaviors, and they predicted that Donald Trump couldn't win because of all these troubles. But despite that, he was elected. So we couldn't really say the news media helped him win. Then what? So we started focusing on social media because social media is so big in America and in the whole world. And also particularly Twitter was kind of famous for its role in politics in America. And the recent presidential election in 2016 was dubbed Twitter election, Twitter battles between these two major candidates because they were very actively tweeting and sending out their messages through Twitter. A lot of people speculated that, these two candidates used Twitter very effectively, and Twitter became the central place for political discourse, and Twitter actually changed the discourse and the course of this election. And, the media also, covered Twitter as one of the most important causes of Donald Trump's victory. And Donald Trump himself also said Twitter helped him win. So at this point you might wonder, and I wonder too, how this was possible. And even some mainstream media like the New York Times said Donald Trump mastered Twitter in a way no candidate for president ever has. So what did he do on Twitter, and how did he tweet? And also, how did Hillary Clinton tweet? That was my burning question that initiated this series of studies. Even before his victory, I was very interested in what he was communicating on Twitter. So I did some literature review to get some ideas about the basic role of social media. And previous research found that social media were major communication tools and PR tools that were replacing campaign websites, traditional campaign websites political candidates used in elections. So political candidates are now focusing more on social media than on their campaign websites because people don't always go to candidates' websites, but they check out, Twitter and social media. And Williams and Gulati actually has they have found that candidates who gain more support on social media are more likely to win the election based on recent findings. So in the recent US elections, those candidates who are more successful on social media were likely to win. Well, according to this, if Donald Trump was more successful on Twitter, we could at least say that would explain, at least partially, his victory, the surprising result. And some other researchers also found that female political candidates were more likely to have Twitter accounts, tweet more frequently, and talk about policy issues more frequently, well, mostly focusing on women's issues. You might not understand why, but this is very closely related to American politics, because in America, female candidates are at a great disadvantage. Well, in Europe, you have seen a lot of strong female politicians, but in America, well, we haven't had a lot of female politicians who've been very successful. So female politicians are still struggling, and female candidates, well, they have to try everything that can help. So they are more active in utilizing Twitter or any kind of social media that can help them. And this is related to what we know about gender stereotypes. Traditionally, there is this, well, set of stereotypes about men and women's personality traits. Although these are very stereotypical and not always accurate, well, still a lot of people assume or expect men to be strong, tough, active, aggressive, competent, rational, and achievement-oriented, while women are assumed to be warm, caring, passive, gentle, compassionate, emotional, and more family-oriented. And that's not the only set of stereotypes. Well, we have stereotypes about personality traits, but also we have stereotypes about men and women's abilities and their interests and their expertise. And there are a set of stereotypes about politicians' issue positions. And women are assumed or expected to be better at, men are expected to be better at economy, military, foreign affairs, technology, science, crime, terrorism, and gun problems. These are tough and so-called masculine issues in America. On the other hand, women are usually assumed to be better at education, health, human rights, family issues, women's issues, arts, environment, and social welfare. These are, again, related to stereotypical personality traits because men are assumed to be strong and tough. They are assumed to be better at handling tough issues like economy and military and crime, while women are assumed to be better at more so-called feminine issues like family issues, human rights issues that kind of require compassionate traits. Oops. And how are these related to politics? Well, these stereotypes actually put a lot of women candidates, women politicians to this disadvantaged position because so-called masculine traits, being tough and strong, and so-called masculine issues like military, crime, are deemed more important by voters. A lot of voters, particularly when they are not really informed or if they are not really interested in politics, they just take cues from the candidate's gender. So they think, oh, this guy is a man, so he will be better at handling terrorism, handling military issues, crime. So female candidates are at a great disadvantage. So female candidates might try hard to self-present as a tough candidate, right? Having some masculine personality traits, But actually, female candidates are double-bind. They have another risk because when female candidates seem more, when they emphasize some so-called masculine issues like tough issues, crime issues, military issues, a lot of voters think that doesn't seem right. They think, oh, that's not gender congruent. That's not a female thing. So that woman cannot do this well. And then if she pretends she's good at it, it's something wrong. So if a female candidate emphasizes that she's good at some of these masculine issues, well, some might buy it, some voters might understand that, but they might not like that woman. Oh, she looks so masculine. So it goes against their likability. Again, so it's really hard for female candidates to, well, do well, right? So as a result, female politicians tend to emphasize their favorite masculine traits. They will try to look tough, but they will still emphasize feminine issues like education and environment or social welfare to counteract these damaging gender stereotypes, because this is the best balance for them. And there's one more factor we should consider, a party effect. Because in America, female candidates are assumed to be liberal. We haven't had a lot of strong, powerful female Republican candidates, Republican politicians in America. So female candidates are assumed to be feminine and assumed to be liberal and assumed to be Democrat, a member of the Democratic Party. And so-called feminine issues are generally owned by the Democratic Party, which means the Democratic Party is known to be better at handling these so-called feminine issues like social welfare, equality issues, environment. So voters, particularly uninformed voters, unconsciously associate women candidates with the Democratic Party. And voters get confused when a Republican Party candidate, a woman is from the Republican Party, because it doesn't go well. So when a Democratic woman emphasizes feminine issues, that's the perfect position for that woman, because voters just assume some expertise. Oh, she's a woman, she's from the Democratic Party, and she emphasizes feminine issues. She must be good at those issues. And for a Republican man, well, it's the opposite. He's a man, he's from the Republican Party, and he's emphasizing some masculine issues. He must be good. So this is the basic stereotypical perceptions. And how can it apply? How can it apply to the recent American election, the presidential election in 2016? The main Republican Party candidate was Donald Trump. The main Democratic Party candidate was Hillary Clinton. Well, let's talk a little bit about these individuals because, well, they are men and women, but they also have some individual differences, individual factors. And Donald Trump is a white male Republican, which is kind of stereotypical condition for a macho guy who is very traditional, who likes kind of male dominance and traditional power structure. And he was a very successful businessman who had a lot of money and who kind of bragged about how many women he conquered, things like that. And he's toxic, so-called toxic masculinity was a big issue in the media because we've never had this kind of political presidential candidate who are boasting about sexually harassing women and demeaning others based on their appearances and lack of power. So he was a lot of trouble. And he was all about this toxic masculinity. For Hillary Clinton, it's interesting because she's been in politics for a long time, and over time, well, she started as the former first lady, but she worked as the Secretary of the State. So she has a lot of experiences in this very male-dominant American politics. And over time, she became very masculine. She became very tough. So she was kind of known for being strong and goal-oriented, kind of masculine by American voters. She's not a traditional American woman. And also, if we think about all those stereotypes, she should kind of downplay her feminine traits to be viable, to look better, to look more competent. But in terms of issue positions, it was kind of tricky. Well, because she's from the Democratic Party, she might emphasize feminine issues, so-called environmental issues, or welfare issues, equality issues. So these are what we know about these two candidates. And based on this, I made a kind of hypothesis that candidates' tweets will reflect their gender-based campaign strategies, because candidates are using Twitter very actively these days. Tweets are replacing other campaign websites or campaign platforms. So they will try to send out their messages through Twitter, and then tweets might be a good text to look at to see what kind of campaign strategies they have. And in specific, I predicted that Trump would emphasize his masculinity in both trait descriptions and issue emphasis. For Clinton, she might emphasize masculine traits, but because of her party position, party affiliation, she might emphasize feminine issues while emphasizing masculine traits. And I had a research question about their language, how their languages will differ, what kind of different gender-based language will they use. And for these questions, I examined their both websites and their tweets. I did content analysis twice, once during primaries and once right before the election. So like 3 months before the election day and 2 weeks during primaries. And my findings, in terms of traits and issues, you can see for Trump, on his website, when I examined his website, he didn't have a lot of things on his website. His website was pretty simple, and he didn't really explain, he didn't have any long biography or something like that. So there was no mention of personality traits on his website. But on his, but he had some masculine issues emphasized on his website, and on Twitter, largely he emphasized masculine traits and masculine issues. So he didn't really emphasize much feminine issues or traits. But for Clinton, as we hypothesized, you can see she emphasized masculine traits on both her website and on Twitter, but she emphasized feminine issues on these both platforms. And the language. It was interesting because on Trump's website, I found that he used a very colloquial, very short, simple, and strong language, very straightforward, but not really conventional. He used the first person while writing. So these are some examples from his website about some issues he was emphasizing. I will make our military so big, powerful, and strong so no one will mess with us. I won't let them take away our guns. So there were not a lot of data or supporting arguments, no details, but he used very strong and simple language, and anybody could, understand this, right? Even an elementary school student can understand what he means. It's very simple and easy to understand. On the other hand, well, on Clinton's website, first, well, her descriptions and, well, explanations were so long, very long and complex. It had a lot of details, and it was written very professionally in third person. So this is a kind of example, but, well, I had to shorten it because, well, everything was so long. Hillary Clinton believes that we need an economy that works for everyone, not just those at the top. Hillary is committed to restoring basic fairness in our tax code, blah, blah, blah. As president, Hillary will, blah, blah, blah. It never ended. So it was so long, a lot of details, and even for me, a researcher, it was impossible to read everything. It was so long, and once you click on one link, it opened up another page with a lot of details. It was just unapproachable, really. It was hard to understand. And Twitter. Trump's language on Twitter was very assertive and straightforward. You can see these examples. Well, he called Hillary Clinton crooked Hillary, and President Obama the worst president in the history. And the media, a very biased, dishonest media. So again, his language was very simple and strong, very straightforward, easy to understand, kind of memorable. And most of his tweets were text only, not a lot of pictures or videos. And well, some of his tweets were uncivil. His tweets often included some bad words, well, about other candidates or, well, critics. Clinton's language on Twitter was again very subtle, implied, and complicated. So she didn't always spell out her point. Even when she criticized Trump, she didn't call him like sexist or racist or anything. She tried to send out that message without spelling out her point. So these are some examples. Donald Trump called her Miss Piggy and Miss Housekeeping. Her name is Alicia Mercado, after a blank line. So her tweets were sometimes like poems. She didn't say everything, and she kind of assumed people would understand. But it's not clear, if people would understand her point, because it was so subtle and complicated. But she used a lot of visuals, like pictures and videos. So wrapping up, Clinton emphasized her masculine traits and feminine issues on both platforms. Trump used an assertive and straightforward, seemingly off-the-cuff first-person language, while Clinton used more implied and layered language. And in terms of the number of tweets, Clinton sent out twice as many tweets as Trump did. But Trump's tweets received, in average, 3 times as many retweets and favorites. So his supporters were very enthusiastic. And whenever he criticized and attacked other politicians, the media, supporters were, enthusiastically responding to the messages and spreading those messages. In specific, his tweets accusing Clinton or the media received significantly more retweets and favorites than other tweets, based on my regression analysis. So we can kind of predict there could be some agenda-setting effects because these messages are spreading so quickly on Twitter, and many people might get some messages from these tweets. So in short, Trump was more successful in gaining support on Twitter. And if you remember Williams and Gulati's findings about those who are successful on social media were more successful in elections, well, we can at least say, his Twitter uses can be a factor that led to his victory. Thank you very much.